Alldus podcast is brought to you by Alldus International, supplying your expert AI and digital transformation staffing needs across the US and Europe. Today, you are listening to our AI in Action series, where leading minds in AI from across the world share their story, success, and advice. AI in Action cuts through the hype and explores the true impact of artificial intelligence in our world today.
Welcome to another episode of the Alldus podcast. Today's guest and joined by Charlton Roberts from Flora. Charlton, thanks for coming on. To kickstart things, be great for a bit of an introduction to you and your journey so far.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Anthony. I'm excited to chat. A little bit about my background. I got started, I wanted to be an actor, actually. I was convinced I was put here to be an artist. Turns out it's way more fun to build stuff for artists, and that's kind of where my career took me. I started off in advertising. From there, got a chance to work in the early days of Squarespace, which was really fun, figuring out how to build at scale and build for creative professionals, which I really found to be my wheelhouse. After Squarespace, I helped build the engineering team at Frame.io, which is a video collaboration software, really popular in Hollywood and really large scale video production suites. We were acquired by Adobe, but we kind of kept the DNA as we got acquired. And that was even more fun to go very deep on very high craft creative professionals and figure out the tools that they need to build. They're a really weird set of customers to build for it. I love it. They have very high expectations from their software, and it makes it very challenging and a lot of fun to build for them. And yeah, I joined Flora in November. So I've been here almost 6 months, 5 months or so. And I knew I wanted to get into AI in some capacity. Didn't know how that slotted into creative professionals. And as soon as I got the call for Flora, I knew right away that it was a company I had to join and get on the train to help build, because I think I'm really compelled by our vision for what we call the creative OS, the ability to build the next generation of creative tools for creators and give them the ability to make stuff they couldn't even have dreamed of before. So.
Love it. Yeah, and I suppose you only joined sort of 6 months ago as well, right? So you're sort of not part of the original sort of founding team, but you've now come on board as a CTO to this mission, obviously, that you're quite passionate about as well. What is it? I suppose why join Flora? What was it about them that sort of pulled you in that direction? And for anyone that doesn't know, what does Flora do?
Yeah, so Flora is an AI creative tool. It's a node-based canvas that lets you generate text, image, video, soon audio generations from a variety of AI models. But our wheelhouse is really that ideation phase. We take things from a creative idea that you have and really help you hone it into something you can hand off or take to the next phase of actually whatever the production version of your creative journey is. We're popular in fashion, brand design, film and production, all that type of stuff. The company's a little over 2 years old. It was born out of New York University's ITP program, which is a master's program for creative technologists. That's where the founders, Weber and Alex, met each other. They started building the first version of Flora for themselves to create a creative project for ITP. Ended up talking to some Pentagram, some really prestigious brand design agencies who were like, I want to buy that. I want to use it. And we're trying to figure out a way to use AI, and this is it. And so turned it into a product pretty quickly. And so the first generation of the OGs at Flora are all from that ITP creative technologist, very scrappy ilk of folks that are really passionate about the customer and also are the customer. They're often creatives themselves. And so, yeah, I was excited to hop on because I have a point of view about how we take a product that's working well and that customers love to scale and get it into the hands of lots of people, get into bigger and bigger companies, have them integrate it into their creative process that I saw be very successful at Frame.io and Adobe. And so, yeah, I saw immediately, I know what we can do here. It was kind of...
Love it. It's easy resonance. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly.
What do you think then what are some of the bigger challenges then that Flora faces in the creative industry when you do have big giants like Adobe and stuff like that? Obviously, as a startup, you can build and ship quicker, right, in terms of that cycle. But what sort of challenges do you see in these different areas?
Oh man, it's super fun because you have these giants like Adobe and Figma, who acquired Weavy, one of our big competitors. all the way down to like mid-size, the Crayas of the world, down to little upstarts that people are coming up with basically very similar products all the time. So it's a super competitive space. So I'd say probably the biggest challenge right now is everyone's sort of following on with this node-based approach. We certainly weren't the first node-based interface, but it's become very popular for AI generations. And everyone's shipping kind of very similar features. So it's how do you design the right feature set and a cohesive sort of strategy about what you're bringing to customers that is compelling and so compelling that, it's not easily copied or, even like we have one of my good friends that I worked with at Frame.io actually vibe coded a version of Flora for himself. And it kind of clicked. It was like a light bulb. It was like, oh, okay, there's a whole like suite of features that we have to bring because it's like table stakes. But that obviously can't be our moat because people can vibe code it for themselves. So we got to find this different cohesive set of features that we think we have a good track on that allow us to really stand out in that market and be that, it's really competitive and scrappy now. We see this long-term vision that we're kind of aiming towards a few years from now where we're your daily driver, where you go to do all of your creative work. That's kind of where we're aiming towards.
Love it. Yeah. It's just so many challenges, but I think it is really important around the sort of moat idea and that you guys are sort of recognizing that as well is obviously a huge thing. What do you think then sort of is some differentiators then when it comes to sort of AI agents and building these sort of AI agents for creative workflows? Where do you feel like the competitive edge is and what sort of makes Flora stand out?
Up until now, our biggest moat has been the sort of mental model of our canvas. Many of our competitors, the nodes are operations or models or like things you can do to media. Whereas one thing we consistently hear from customers is that our approach to the product matches more their mental model of their creative process. And what they mean by that is like a node on our canvas is an image, it's a video, it's a piece of text. It's actually the thing on canvas is how you think of your work, and then we give you a set of tools to operate on it, as opposed to having you compose our tools to fit your creative process. So I think that's traditionally what we've been writing on till now. I think we've got some new ones that are pretty compelling though. One is we just launched today actually our own creative agent, which we think of it as kind of like Claude Code for creatives. It's called Fauna. And we think that's ultimately where all of this is going, that, just like software developers today very rarely are hand typing all of their code, but rather describing and creating constraints around the type of code they want the agent to write for them. That's kind of what Fauna does for creatives. You're able to sort of get your idea onto the page, reason about it, talk back and forth with the agent, and it can help you build that workflow. That's one piece. And then I think another thing we launched last week is a feature called Techniques. And we consider ourselves we invest heavily in the creativity as a workflow. So there's the exploration phase where you're kind of diverging and figuring out what your thoughts are and what direction you're going to go. And then there's this sort of second phase of creativity that once you've figured out a direction, how do you package it up for production or for a handoff or for whatever its next life is going to be? And for that, we have a feature called Techniques, which lets you package down a workflow on a canvas down to a single node. And we think that's ultimately going to be a couple benefits there. One, you're able to package up workflows for your own team, but kind of where we're headed is the ability for creatives to share those workflows without revealing the actual steps that are inside the workflows as IP themselves. A way to package their work as a competitive advantage for themselves as a creative. And we think that those are some of the emerging new moats and some of the bets we're placing that, creative orgs and creative teams are here to say we got to give them the right tools to get ever more efficient and build ever more complex workflows that are capable of more and more.
Yeah. Obviously, and because that helps build the moat, because as you mentioned, obviously, some creatives are sort of vibe coding and nearly sort of building themselves sort of tools, right? And that kind of leads me on to that around sort of like engineering teams, right? Obviously, if a creative pro can sort of vibe code something and imagine what an engineer can do, and I think you guys are quite fond of that as well in terms of using AI-assisted coding tools like Cloud Code. So what's sort of Flora's relationship then there, and what does that look like in terms of the engineering team?
Yeah, I mean, in my first few months here, I was spending a lot of time reorganizing our whole product and engineering development process around how do we make the most benefit from agentic coding. And so, previously I really didn't like tech design documents, for example. I thought they slowed things down and I just like didn't believe, let's just get straight to code. Let's get things out to people. And actually, I've realized that that's, at least in this phase of building, really important. If you can design the guardrails for the agent, then the agent can piece it up and just go with it. I think, tools wise, we use a variety of Claude Code, Codex. Everybody kind of uses a different mix that's right for them. And we just spend a lot of time designing our repo so that it works well in a variety of different tools. One that we really love is called Charlie. It's a smaller agent designed by a team here in Williamsburg as well, actually. And it's nice because it lives in Slack and Linear and Sentry and GitHub. And so you can kind of treat it like a colleague, actually, and give it full tasks. That one's been really helpful. But I think the winning mix is there's no silver bullet. It's like keep trying things, keep iterating, keep tacking things on. Once you have something that works, share it with the rest of the team. But I think we're definitely moving more and more towards full agentic generation. We're thinking a lot about actual blockers for things like pull request reviews. How could we remove that as a blocker? What are the internal signals we could give ourselves that would let just code get shipped effortlessly? And I think, yeah, over the next few months, we'll just keep accelerating on that regard. I think it's going to be really fun.
Yeah, it definitely. And I think because when we met recently, I think I asked about sort of the code generation base in Flora, and you said like nearly nobody's sort of kind of manually coding anymore, right? So it's
That's
just
right, yeah.
it's crazy how everything is sort of changed in engineering drastically, and those who are sort of adopting are just able to build and accelerate things so much quicker. Obviously, that's something that has come into hiring and that too. And some companies are still, I think, worry that AI agent tools and AI assisted tools are maybe making developers, engineers potentially rusty with code. Is there sort of a fear of that in terms of like you need to have some level of code to be able to correct and debug sort of these AI generated code, or how do you sort of see that in terms of these AI agent tools and sort of when you're hiring and what you look at?
For sure. I think the most surprising thing is the number of cheaters that we've had. I think I mentioned this on our last call, but like the number of folks who think they can get away with having an LLM running just off of screen, trying to answer the questions, coding or otherwise, is just remarkable. I think that speaks to the rustiness. People aren't confident in their abilities. But if you're interviewing, please know we know the instant that that's happening, and it is not a good thing. But I think two fronts, like as a hiring manager, I'm thinking a lot about how are you going to leverage these tools. So I'm gonna ask you, and I do ask everyone, what's your take? What's your stack? How are you thinking about it? What are the techniques that you're using to get better output out of your agents? And I think we're more and more looking for agent engineers, prompt engineers as part of software engineering. Is how are you going to get the best output out of it? And then simultaneously, I think I had a college professor who just was insistent on this point. I don't think he's the originator of this thought, but that whatever layer of coding that your software that you're working on, you need to fundamentally understand one layer below that and be pretty fluent in that layer as well. That's going to give you better optimizations. He meant it in terms of like C++ and assembly, but I think of agentic coding as like the next layer. It's a new abstraction over what we do. That's also not a new idea. I think a lot of people are talking about that. But as a result, when I'm hiring, I'm like, okay, even though you're not going to spend all day one layer beneath, which is understanding that what it's actually doing under the hood. I'm not talking about data structures and algorithms. Agents can write that for you, but can you reason through a complex problem and understand how to break it apart into pieces that a computer can solve efficiently? You need to be able to do that without the help of an agent so that if the agent's doing a good job at it. And so that's when we're hiring, that's kind of what we're evaluating for is like, can you use the agent? And then are you going to be a good judge of if the agent is doing a good work because you can do it without the agent?
Yeah,
it's kind of how I think about it.
And you're sort of like breaking the pieces down then as well, because to create it. So really sort of things like system design is sort of really becoming a bit more of a, this is what you need to understand to be able to use this tool like correctly or at least efficiently too. I'm noticing that as well in the hiring. So if anyone's looking for tips, you've heard two here already from Charlton. If you're looking for a new role, and speaking of roles, obviously Flora's hiring right now. Exciting time of growth. as someone that's sort of joined recently as well, what can you say to talent, either commercial or engineering, that could consider a move here? Why should they join?
Yeah. First and foremost, we're just having a lot of fun. Like, this is my favorite phase of a company where kind of the world's our oyster. There's so much optionality and things we could do. We spend a lot of time thinking about where we put our scarce resources to the highest leverage thing, which it's really fun to have options. I think we're having a lot of fun in Williamsburg in person. There's a lot of, I hadn't worked, full time in person since before COVID. And it's just very refreshing to be able to jam on an idea ad hoc with the designer that just talked to you about it, or with our forward deployed creatives, which are native AI creatives that work for Flora, that spend all day with our customers and using our product. They have a much deeper understanding of how our customers are going to use our product than I ever possibly could. So that's really fun. I think the other thing is just hiring strategy wise. We raised our Series A in January, it gives us a lot of runway. It gives us a lot of safety in terms of weathering this crazy market and what's ever going to happen the next 12 to 18 months. I don't think anyone knows. But I think my strategy has been, I want to hire as conservatively as possible, keep the talent density way to the max as much as I can. Every new person needs to be able to be an obvious increase into the whole team. They're going to make everyone on the team better at their job. So far, we've been able to keep that hiring pace. And I think the vision that I have is that creates a really a team and environment of high trust, lots of autonomy. Everyone can work on whichever parts of the product that they feel most conviction about, and can kind of make the case that that's where the company needs to go. And so I think if you like an environment where you thrive in that high autonomy, you have ideas about what AI for creatives should look like and the tools that you think they should have access to, and how to build those tools for them, I think this is the place for you. It's being in a room with lots of people that are very passionate about using AI to create the next generation of creativity writ large. It's really fun.
Love it. Such an exciting time. And if anyone wants to get in touch with Charlton, please reach out to him on LinkedIn, and we'll drop the link in with the podcast recording. So, Charlton, thanks a bunch for taking time. It's been a pleasure. And we'll speak soon.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Anthony. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Alldus podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any Android podcast of choice. You can also head over to our website, www.alldus.com, to listen to more podcasts, view our open roles, and stay up to date with industry news. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more great episodes coming very soon.